Welcome in to the Matchday 3 episode of Champions League with the real underscore G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. We are playing a road game tonight, but we're doing a late night with the real underscore G Warner as usual. Going to go through the two match days, or I guess 2 days of this match day. Easy for me to explain, but Tuesday and Wednesday Champions League. We'll come up with an ultimate best bet end of show. Had a really good run lately on best bets. I think we're 7-2 last nine, which is great. Can't ask for more than that. Trying to keep the momentum going. And let's find some winners. Going to go through each of the matches on this card for Tuesday and for Wednesday in the European Champions League. And if you're not following me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, anywhere, Patreon at the real underscore G Warner on all those platforms. And if you want to hear more from this podcast network, please follow on Spotify, leave a 5-star review, same sort of thing for Apple's podcast there, and then YouTube at the real underscore G Warner. If you want to hear the NFL podcast, for example, coming out tomorrow night, and some college basketball stuff soon to come down the line as well, with the return of the need for seeds. So let's start, I guess, where the money is, which is in Champions League, of course. But I'll start on Tuesday, the early window with Monaco hosting Crvena also known as Red Star Belgrade. Currently, Monaco, 1.5 goal favorite right now. Total is 3, juiced all the way to over. Ton of juice on Red Star Belgrade away from home. Now, Monaco, to me, are not the most impressive team out there, but do have a good offense, which does make any sort of underplay very scary. I do think the 3 is a number that I was looking for, but I'm not sure that that's enough for me to want to play. The push on 3 is essential, I think, if you're playing unders in this sport. We did have a 3.25 as soon as I saw lines, which was probably last week, I want to say. But there was a 3.25 out there. It's fallen to 3 though, with all the juice right now and over. So we might see 3.25 come back before the early window kickoff of one of the first 2 games. The big problem here is, do we trust Crvena to defend? I don't think they're going to score much, but the problem is if they are not really threatening Monaco's net, then unfortunately what happens then is it's going to be all one-way traffic. Crvena a weaker side will end up getting tired, and unfortunately, I think that's a big problem for the side from Serbia. I just realized, forgot to post we were going live on my Twitter at the real underscore G Warner. If you have any questions or want me to go through a little bit, something a little bit more in depth, feel free to throw something in there. I have the comments on. And we did find some comments on Friday's episode for the 5 European soccer leagues domestically. So maybe we get some more in this episode. I'll move next or I guess if I'm going to give, so the story for the ultimate best bet is I give my favorite best bet from each of the days. So from Tuesday and Wednesday on this Champions League card. So I got to nominate something from this game. If there's any interest for me, it's in that Red Star Belgrade under 3. I think if you already noticed that I kind of went away from it, it's not a great chance that it's going to make the card, but you never know, I guess. So Crvena under 3 is my biggest interest in that early one. The only other match in this early window, Milan, who I'm wearing the Christian Pulisic Captain America kit. They are hosting Bruges from Belgium. Currently, Milan, a 1.25 goal favorite with a little bit more juice in the home team. Over under is 3, just a little bit to under. And anyone that's listening, attending this game, make sure you get some food outside the stadium. The kiosks they have set up around San Siro are awesome. And I had a really great sausage and peppers, I want to say, last year, if I remember correctly. But anyway, of course, all the food in Italy is great. But to give a little bit of an idea of kind of where this number has moved. So initially, I saw Bruges as small as a 1-goal underdog, but all the juice was on Milan at that point. As you'd expect, the home favorite and the much bigger home club getting bet. It looks like if there's trending any direction, we're looking at this line climbing even higher, might even hit 1.5 for kickoff. As for the total, it's climbed from 2.75 to 3. So that's also saying something. Seems like the money's coming in on the home favorite and also the over, which my biggest interest here, I think, is to back Bruges, but in the under direction, because I think Champions League matches are routinely over. The over-unders are kind of overrated, overpriced, or are made too big because a lot of times they're really good teams, of course, and a lot of money that follows those teams domestically also will probably play them. But that's more of a sides issue. I just feel like mainly most of these totals start higher than I would have ever made them. So it does make it a little bit challenging for me to kind of pick and choose which ones I think are worth wagering that are too high versus my numbers. But to be to be frank, I actually expect this number to be a little bit higher. So I think the move from 2 3/4 to three makes sense. But I'm also waiting to see where this number closes because I don't really see it stopping. There's a little bit more juice on under three right now. But it's a really essential push point for unders. So, because you basically get your money returned to you if it lands three, whereas at 2 3/4, you lose half your bet. So, that's significant. We'll see what happens with the numbers and how it moves on this one. Bruges to me, I mean, they have a lot of talent. They've spent for a Belgian club, they've spent a lot. They had some good runs a couple seasons ago in this Champions League, and then really, I think, used a ton of their effort and their ability, their best they had. Didn't play very well in the Belgian league, but here they are back in Champions League and expanded format. And I think they can give Milan some trouble because I just haven't really been that impressed with Milan so far year to date. Move next to the big window. We have a lot of matches to discuss on Tuesday in this window and a lot that I like. So stay tuned, stick around, and thank you for coming in if you're live with me at the 12:41 local time here in Dallas, Texas, as the dog is nibbling on stuff over here. But Arsenal, a 2.5 goal favorite right now to Shakhtar Donetsk as we start the evening window, or I guess they're both evening, but the later window. Total here is 3.5, so pretty juicy the under right now. So a lot of juice on Shakhtar Donetsk as a 2.5 goal underdog and to under 3.5. In terms of movement from this number, as the dog continues to move around, but I guess he's not barking yet, so that's good enough. A lot more money has actually come in on Shakhtar Donetsk at this point, which is a little bit surprising. Arsenal had a tough result this weekend, but I don't think that really plays much into Champions League. And honestly, at a better side, as it means that William Saliba will be available for this matchup, where he won't be for Liverpool next weekend after taking a dog so red card. And total, it looks like 3.5 has been the number so far, and that's been as high as 3 3/4, but it's fallen back down to 3.5, and now is seeing a fair amount of money on under here. I wonder if that's potentially an issue with Bukayo Saka, who had been hurt over the international window with England, and then I don't think he appeared this weekend for Arsenal, so that could be a big deal and could certainly tell that story a little bit. The big question, though, for me, whether Saka plays or not, is the performance of Shakhtar Donetsk. I mean, they sold Mikhailo Mudryk to Chelsea, who was not really taken off, but he was so good for them because they basically unleashed him on the world, and that's why he got paid, or they got paid over 100 million euros because they sat deep. They basically pushed him forward on a counterattack, and he was able to pierce defenses and win and cover a lot of spreads for me. Different story here. It's going to be the same type of setup. I expect Shakhtar Donetsk in their own end defending Arsenal as much as possible. The problem is Arsenal has struggled with low blocks, and they've gotten better with them over the last couple of seasons. Once they got a little bit more used to everyone playing it against them, and I just don't think that the Ukrainian, usually a side that kind of skews younger, because not a lot of the well-established pros want to play in a war-torn country at this point, which I don't blame them for. Shakhtar Donetsk are used to playing road games in this competition. They will not play a single home game this year. They've tried to make, I think, Hamburg or Prague or one of those cities as their stomping home ground. But I think there's probably just a normalcy to playing away from home now because they're so used to it in any UEFA continental event. The big question, though, is can they keep Arsenal out of the net and how long can they do that? Because I just don't think Shakhtar Donetsk have much chance at scoring. If Shakhtar Donetsk don't score, you have an extra full goal with about the same juice right now, actually, on under as opposed to backing Shakhtar Donetsk. So I think that's my biggest interest in that one, under 2.5 in Shakhtar Donetsk visiting Arsenal. We'll move next to Juventus hosting VfB Stuttgart. Currently, Juventus a half a goal favorite right now, but almost all the juice on Stuttgart on the road, surprisingly. Total is 2 3/4, and it is juiced very heavily to under. And I think it makes sense because I can't say I've seen a Juventus total this high all season. In terms of movement, where I've seen this go, it's actually climbed from 2.5 to 2 3/4. I think a lot based on the possession offense that Stuttgart are going to play. We saw them play very well against Real Madrid. Unfortunately, late goal killed the side, I think, and the total as well. Late Endrick goal, which probably should have been saved by Alexander Nubel, but oh well. I mean, not really. Oh well, that's a big punch to take. But I think Stuttgart have kind of shown that they really. I mean, they were getting a lot of respect in the Bundesliga when Oliver Onis came on as manager, and then really has gotten more respect to finish second in the German Bundesliga last season ahead of Bayern München. And I got to say, I can't complain with how I've seen Stuttgart. They played very defensively against Bayern Munich on the road this week. Tough to then go again away, this time to Torino to face Juve. But Juventus coming off a very fortunate victory themselves this weekend with a lot of problems throughout their midfield, injuries and such, which is kind of amazing. But Juve are not used to playing Champions League because they didn't play it last season and play any Europe at all whatsoever because of their ban from UEFA essentially for outspending their means. I think Juve, we saw them take a red card and somehow still win at Leipzig coming from behind. I don't think that's likely to happen here. Probably those circumstances won't reappear, but Stuttgart are very interesting to me because they can control this game. Juve are not great at scoring goals this season, and I think we might see an under here too because that's the way Juventus want to play. I think if you play Stuttgart, you probably want to put some money on under two because, or under 2 3/4, the exact price under as well, because I think there's a good chance that this is a tight game and maybe Juventus win 1-0 or get a late goal to somehow take a victory. But I think you want both Stuttgart and the side, on the side and the under. Sorry, it's late. If you're playing this one, move next to Real Madrid hosting Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League final rematch from last season, which Borussia Dortmund I feel like outplayed Real Madrid, but of course, get well soon. Animo Dani Carvajal with a unexpected header from one of the shortest men on the pitch last Champions League final, but found a goal and that was enough for Real Madrid. Real Madrid currently a 1.25 goal favorite right now with all the juice to Borussia Dortmund. Over under is 3.25, and it's just pretty heavily to over right now. Real Madrid went on the road Saturday night to Celta de Vigo, where Borussia Dortmund played at home on Friday. Certainly some rest advantage, though Dortmund do have to travel, so that's not great. In terms of where this number has moved, not really that much so far. We've seen actually, let me take that back. So we're treading towards 1.5 goals as a favorite for Real Madrid because initial number I first saw, I was looking at the wrong line, was Dortmund. They were 1.25 goal underdog with all the juice. That's pretty much flipped completely now to Real Madrid, an extremely juiced 1.25. Looking like 1.5 is next. Total's 3.25, juiced all the way to over. And that's probably the number that hasn't moved as much, just a couple cents in the over direction. But I think my biggest interest here is to back Borussia Dortmund, which is amazing because I really just want to be against them every Bundesliga match I can. But in Champions League play and on the continent, they've been a lot better. Their defense is a lot more sophisticated. And I think they're a lot more sensible, pragmatic, if you will, to play a brand of football that they can actually sustain. It's not the way they play because they just put their weaker defenders under too much pressure in Bundesliga play because they need to win every match. In Champions League, they don't have to play that same way. And that's kind of where I'm at with them and kind of how I'm sticking to it. So lean to Dortmund getting a 1.25, also like under 3.25 in that one because I think those play together. My biggest question is how much can Borussia Dortmund score away from home because Real Madrid's defense is great and they did clean sheet them in the Champions League final last year. Aston Villa then hosts Bologna. Currently, Villa a 1 goal favorite with more juice on the Bologna side. Over under is 2.5, juice pretty heavily to over, and I think we're starting to see the long season kind of wear on Aston Villa. They've got a bunch of injuries right now, but you could also say Bologna were certainly not prepared for a Champions League season after an incredible run last year in Serie A to qualify, and then they lost all their players and also their manager. On the Aston Villa side, they've dealt with some injuries for sure, but they keep playing like the same guys over and over again. And so that's going to happen because the human body just can't play 90, 100 minutes every twice a week, every week, sometimes 3 times depending on how the matches fall. My biggest interest here, I like Bologna getting the full goal of insurance. Now, they're not really a team I'm that interested in backing, but the full goal of insurance, like I just mentioned, is huge. And we saw it get very juiced at one point. It seems like some Aston Villa money has been coming in, though that is something I would expect as the UK money seems to dominate the pretty much every continental market across the UEFA, I guess, landscape. But Aston Villa haven't been that impressive. They're really good at squeezing opponents. Maybe they have a smaller pitch, or maybe the crowd makes their high line a little bit better than it is away from home. But I just don't know that I see Bologna scoring much. So that does make the +1 a little bit more dangerous. And I think makes the under 2.5 my biggest interest in that matchup on Tuesday. Girona then hosts Slovan Bratislava, one of the smallest clubs in this competition. I guess, coming in from Slovakia, from Bratislava specifically. Almost went and party there one time, but didn't make it. And I'm kind of disappointed because when's the next time I'm going to be that close to Slovakia? Anyway, Girona, 2 goal favorite right now with almost all the juice. Over unders 3.5, and it's juiced really heavily to under. Now, this one is very interesting to me, this matchup. In terms of where the money is moved, not much, but a little bit of money coming in on Slovan Bratislava. I think probably because the +2 is gigantic, especially considering Girona's form, but we'll get to that in a second. The total is 3.5. It looks like from every time I've seen it, there's been a move down to 3.25, but come right back up to 3.5. Very juicy at the moment, but it should be because Girona haven't scored at all. They, I think, were making their Champions League debut this season. They sold a lot of players. They are basically a minor league team for Manchester City, and Man City took Savinho from them. And unfortunately, they haven't really been able to replace a lot of their talent. Plus, they were relatively minor in their talent and taking advantage of a La Liga team, like entire league that were playing twice a week, and they were playing once and we're playing well. We haven't seen that from them this year. A loss at home to Real Sociedad, who have not been able to score at all this weekend. Not a great sign, especially getting clean sheeted in their own building. Now they're here. They get to take on a very weak team, but I think Slovan Bratislava can hang in this matchup. I don't see Girona being anywhere near a 2 goal favorite to anybody at this point. I mean, maybe a lower league team, but certainly not one that won the Slovakian championship last season. Like maybe that trophy doesn't mean as much as, but ultimately, I'm still a believer, and every promoted club that comes up seems to be pretty competitive. Whether it's from the Segunda División in Spain or the Schweizer Liga, the second Bundesliga in Germany, they always seem to compete in the top leagues. And I think if you win a title, that does mean something. And I don't see a huge divide here, especially nowhere near two. And the 3.5 goals, it might take Girona 2 matches to get there. So pretty interested in Slovan Bratislava on the road in this matchup, +2, and also under 3.5. Got 2 matches left on this Tuesday card before we get to Wednesday, and I will be nominating one of my favorites on this Tuesday card for my best bet, which will come end of show, 7-2 last 9. Pretty good if I don't say so myself. I'll actually check that record because I just want to make sure I'm not shouting out multiple times and I'm wrong. But the next matchup we'll go to is Sturm Graz hosting Sporting Lisboa. Currently, Sturm Graz from Austria, 1.5 goal underdog. All the juice at home. Over under is 3, juice very heavily to over. We have seen some movement in this one, if I remember correctly. We saw it move from 1.5 down to 1.25, back to 1.5 at present in the wee hours of Tuesday morning here in Dallas, Texas. Morning in Europe right now. To all of you tuning in, I guess buenos dias or buongiorno or bonjour. So Sturm Graz, not the strongest, but they've seen some money as it moved down from 1.5 to 1.25, but we're back at 1.5. In terms of the total, we've seen it go from 3 to 3.25, back to 3. So it seems like there's some money kind of pushing this one around. And honestly, I've been surprised about how much respect Sporting Lisboa has gotten this competition. We're pretty big favorites to Lille in the opener, took a lead, then got very benefited from a red card and really did a great job of not giving Lille a chance. So credit them for that. But then went on the road, and I think we're favorite at Eindhoven last week, and that didn't, or last match day, that did not work well at all. Pretty sure I was on I think it was, I want to say it was, maybe it was Feyenoord. No, Feyenoord was an underdog. So yeah, it was. I think it was PSV Eindhoven, who we'll get to actually next. And I mean, that was a relatively easy winner for me, and I'm very happy I played it. Sporting closed the favorite. Not really sure that was deserved. Clearly, it wasn't based on the result, but there's been a lot of love for Sporting Lisboa, and I'm trying to like keep that in mind down the stretch because they've been a bigger favorite than I would expect a lot of these matches, I got to say. So that's been interesting. I don't know that I agree with it, but it seems like the Champions League market is not willing to give up on Sporting Lisboa. Of course, one road loss in Champions League, not a big deal, of course, but it does feel like there's a little bit of kind of extra like love or something like that for a team that I don't really see it from. So still waiting to see that proven to me. I think going on the road again as a big favorite seems like a really tough situation. Yeah, 6-2 last 8, so that's not so bad. I think really my interest here is the home underdog into under. Sturm Graz, I thought looked very naive in their opener against Stade Brestois, French Ligue 1 side, in a loss, but I think outplayed the French club. Not, I was about to say French Giants, but those certainly are not. I can't really get away from thinking that the market's. I mean, I'm not ignoring that the market has loved Sporting Lisboa, but I haven't, and I feel like there's been money to make against them, and certainly on unders. So maybe under three is my biggest into this one, but I lean to the Austrians plus 1.5 as well. Last but not least, we go PSG, PSV Eindhoven, battle of the PSs in a continent. PSG 1.5 goal favorite right now. All the juice on Eindhoven on the road. Over under is 3.25, and it is juiced pretty much all the way to over there too. In terms of movement on this number, we've seen PSV as low as 1.25 goal favorite, so that's climbed to 1.5. As you probably would expect, PSG were pretty dominant this weekend at home against Strasbourg. Meanwhile, Eindhoven have not looked great in this competition, I'll say, but honestly, I think they were a team I backed a lot last season, maybe with mixed results, but ultimately, I think PSG, I've said on league on specific areas of my podcast, betting the pitch on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify, plus YouTube at the real underscore G Warner, like all the other platforms that I'm on. Um, and I think PSG are a team I want to back in Champions League because I don't think the loss of Mbappe is completely irreplaceable. He's the best player in the world, yes, but I think PSG can sustain that and will be undervalued because they don't have him. Unfortunately, in a big favorite matchup here in Champions League, it's not exactly the same. I think PSG will be about reasonable value in Liga, though I did bet against them with Strasbourg and got a maybe fortunate push on +2 this weekend, though I thought Strasbourg were in great position to cover the spread and make it a lot tighter game. With that said, I think Eindhoven are a much better team than 1.5 goals. And honestly, it's kind of alarming how many matches I like on this card, but I really do. And I like under 3.25 because I think PSG will control the ball, but I think Eindhoven will do a lot to try to prevent them from getting easy looks and easy targets, and will try to protect their net in this matchup because they know a draw on the road in Paris is certainly a good outcome for them. So that does it for the Tuesday card. We'll get to Wednesday in 1 second. I got to nominate a best bet for this Wednesday card. And I gotta say, there's so much on here to like. It's hard to pick, but I think my biggest interest. I mean, there's not as much safety in that one, but I think I do like seeing a current a number. So Aston Villa Bologna is under 2.5 right now. It's plus money at Bet Online. If you're not a member of Bet Online, SportsBetting.ag, sister sites that will. So if you've been a member at one and not the other, go make a deposit up to $500. I think they'll match it 100%. And follow the link on the podcast description, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on YouTube at the real underscore G Warner, and you can get in and get some free money. Huge deal to use their own casino's own money against them. But I'll go with that Bologna under 2.5. I do think we'll see Villa and Bologna climb to 2.75 before kickoff, but any more that you can get from this one, I like 2.5. Certainly like the odd at plus 105. But really, I just don't see a lot of I'm about to say runs. I don't see a lot of goals in this matchup. Apologies. It is late. Move to Wednesday, get through this card, then come out with an ultimate best bet 1 minute. That'll go in Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts at the real underscore G Warner on both those platforms. We'll start in the early window with Stade Brestois from France. They're hosting Bayer Leverkusen. Currently, Brest, a 1.25 goal underdog with all the juice. Over under is 3, and that is juiced more to the under at the moment. This number has climbed from 1 to 1.25, but it's very juice. Not a huge difference between those numbers, though. Ultimately, the goal of insurance is what I'm after, and of course, if I can get a 1.25, it's certainly where I want to be. Bet against Leverkusen this weekend. They were, I thought, impressive against Frankfurt, but were not able to cover the spread. Big 1.25 goal favorite at home. Now they're a big 1.25 goal favorite away from home. Also back Stade Brestois this weekend, who I thought deserved to win, but conceded a late 86-minute goal off of certain private region, it seemed, was the way that Stade Rennais ended up bundling a goal in across the goal line. Gaping empty net cross in the box off the guy's dick pretty much into the goal. Not my favorite way to see my win snatched from or a push snatched from the jaws of victory. But Stade Brestois, I feel like, have been really good. There's a lot of questions about how Champions League will take out a middling and honestly relegation fighting Liga side in France, and see how that impacts what they do this season. But I mean, coming off an international break where they didn't have a lot of internationals, I feel like they're in a pretty good position to potentially cause some problems here. We saw Florian Wirtz, the young phenom for Bayer Leverkusen and the German national team, not play or not start after playing matches for Die Mannschaft in the last 2-week international break. I'm very curious to see what that lineup looks like. I imagine the climb in the juice here, or climb in the number from 1 to 1.25, that will probably see him start. But ultimately, the big question about Leverkusen is their defense. Now, I'm tempted to play under 3 because I think they'll struggle offensively away from home, and Sabastouar are known for being a better defensive side. But I just feel like Leverkusen, they're really good at taking leads and not keeping them. So I think I'm more interested in probably the best side here at 1.25 than I am in the total, but I do like the under 3 in that matchup as well. And it is the late night with the real underscore G Warrior. So the yawns are in. 25 minutes in the episode, though. We will push on. Moving next to Atalanta hosting Celtic. Currently, Atalanta a 1.25 goal favorite. All the juice on Celtic almost on the road. Over under is 3.25. Juice pretty heavily to under there as well. Now, Atalanta, I feel like they've been a lot more defensive this season, or at least have had more capable defenders. They're usually an all offense, all out attack. Though they might be against Celtic. Celtic have gotten embarrassed by Borussia Dortmund and honestly never really perform in any European competitions from what I can remember. I feel like they're usually in the Champions League and that doesn't go very well for them. But I don't know. There's a lot for me to want to play here. A number smaller than I thought it would be, maybe as a reference to Atalanta, but totals like it's a little bit bigger than the 3 and change that I made it to get a full 3.25, though it's pretty juiced to the under, so it's about what I made it. I don't know that there's a lot here for me, which is, I guess, rare to say considering it's a Champions League matchup. Move next to Young Boys. Bern, they're hosting Inter Milan. Currently, Young Boys, a 1.25 goal underdog at home with all the juice on Inter. Over under is 3, and just a little bit heavier to over than to under in this one. In terms of movement here, we've seen 1.25 this whole time, and total's been 3, so not a lot of movement. Total smaller than I made it, maybe because Inter Milan have struggled this season, but I think Young Boys have really looked like this competition's too hard for them. They're, I think, going to be playing on an artificial turf field, always a pitch that everyone complains about in Champions League, and maybe that could potentially reduce some Inter Milan lineup continuity by seeing some rotation or seeing some players who can try to protect and not play the full 90 minutes to protect their knees. I'm not sure how that'll go, but I think there's not a lot for me to want to do here because I don't think Young Boys have shown to be at this level of competition yet. And I'm not really wanting to bet that against Inter Milan of all teams. Moving next to RB Leipzig hosting Liverpool. Currently, Leipzig a half a goal underdog at home. All the juice on Liverpool on the road. Over under is 3.25, which is pretty heavily to under right now. Leipzig are great in Champions League first halves. They seem to take leads and then squander them. Happened against Juventus, even against 10 players at home in Eastern Germany. And unfortunately, when I went, I guess it was a German national team event, but it didn't really seem like much of a crowd. And I think that's generally been a complaint about Red Bull Leipzig, at least recently. Liverpool on the other side have been really dominant, have been getting a ton of respect. I mean, close a goal favorite to Chelsea at home at Anfield this past weekend in Premier League, English Premier League, excuse me. I think Leipzig are the side I want here. I just don't know that a half of a goal is enough for me because it's, I mean, of course, a home result, a draw is significant, and that should be a pretty minimal like goal for Leipzig. But numbers a little smaller than I made it, but not much different. And I think we'll see UK money continue to dominate Champions League. So we'll probably see Liverpool climb closer to 3/4 of a goal favorite than going back to a quarter of a goal from the current half a goal, very juiced at the moment. But in terms of the total, I'm interested there too because Leipzig's defense has been awesome. Specifically in the Bundesliga, took another clean sheet this weekend and a 2-0 win on the road at Mainz. No fumf. I feel like Liverpool, they're a possession team. They're a lot less daring and a lot more pragmatic, and I think that's good for under. So I'll put both those on my list, though. I think Leipzig as a home underdog is of great interest because I just don't think I'm in love with this Liverpool side like everyone seems to be in betting markets. It's almost like they still think Jurgen Klopp is still there, who actually just signed on to be a some sort of organization member at Leipzig. Not making it sound like a cult because it's definitely not in Germany, but lean to under 3.25 and that half a goal on Leipzig. Move next to Red Bull Salzburg. Speaking of Red Bulls, the Roten Bullen, I guess, of De Salzburg. They are hosting Dinamo Zagreb in one of the smaller named matchups out there. Salzburg currently a 3/4 goal favorite, just split both ways. Over under is 3, and it's just pretty heavily to under. Now, Dinamo Zagreb feel like one of those teams that I think qualifies through the playoffs, get in this competition. Hard to say that they have looked good, taking some big losses. Salzburg have not looked great either, so it does feel like they're a pretty big favorite. For that reason, I'll put Dinamo Zagreb on my list, though I'm not sure how until I get a full goal of insurance if I'm interested there. And honestly, Salzburg's defense has been pretty bad, but I feel like their offense has been very limited considering they're usually a like minor league team that then sends a bunch of their talent to Red Bull Leipzig or other clubs in Germany. I'm not sure how many players, even though I did see them live at Inter Milan last season in Champions League playing very competitively. One of those early round 11:45 Central Time, Dallas, Texas time starts, or I think 5:45 in Italy, in Italia. But I don't know if there's a ton for me to do in this one. I think the only way I'd look is to fade Red Bull Salzburg, whether it's their offense by playing under or just the team in general and playing Zagreb, getting that three-quarters of a goal. I just feel like we haven't seen an easy run for Salzburg. Maybe this is the time it starts. I'm just not sure I believe it. Move next to Manchester City hosting Sparta Prague. Currently, Man City, a 2 and 3/4 goal favorite with more juice on Sparta Prague at the moment. Over under is 3.5, juice pretty heavily to over right now. In terms of movement on this one, we've seen Sparta Prague 2 and 3/4 since I've been watching it, and the total's been 3.5, but it's been seeing a little bit of slight, tiny amount of money hitting over. Um, I wish I had the cojones to back Sparta Prague and under here. I think I probably like Sparta Prague under more than I do like than the side. But as this gets towards three, I think I'm more interested. Juice doesn't certainly look like it's pointing that direction, but it's definitely climbing rather than falling. And I gotta say, if there's enough money to push Sparta Prague down, that does interest me quite a bit as well. I just feel like Manchester City are kind of overvalued. They're clearly the best team in the world, have been for a long time, but that doesn't always represent in these competitions, and they're a gigantic favorite. And any sort of slow start, yes, they could certainly cover the spread in the second half or even in stoppage time for that matter. But it just seems like a long way to go for Manchester City, even in their own beds, to win a match at that type of by that type of margin. Moving next to Barcelona hosting Bayern Munchen. Currently, Barca pick 'em at home with all the juice. Over under is 3.5. Juice slightly more to over. And Barcelona have a pretty big match coming up this weekend with El Clasico against Real Madrid. But before then, they get to try to avenge a big blowout, embarrassing, probably most embarrassing loss Barcelona ever took. I think it was 8-2 against Bayern Munich, coached by none other than Hansi Flick, who's actually the Barcelona manager right now. With that said, I think Barca only a pick 'em right now feels a little bit cheap to me, especially Robert Lewandowski, who left Bayern Munich after they really tried to go after Erling Haaland instead of re-signing him. There's definitely some interest in the Barcelona time, fan base, team, camp, everything to win this matchup. So I'm pretty interested in the pick 'em right now. I feel like we won't see that until game time, but at the moment it's available, and that's what I do is I put lines out that are available. So that interests me a lot. I think both these teams are over teams, so over 3.5 is probably my lean, but it's a lot higher than I usually would consider. And every time I like an over, I need to mention my guy Joe Dollar, one of my most loyal of many loyal Patreon subscribers. Yes, but Joe Dollar's been there a long time, and he loves overs, and he's been hoping that I would eventually come over to the over side of the tracks. Unfortunately, I think the train will hit me before I get there. Move next to Benfica, 1 goal favorite to Feyenoord. Juice is split both ways, so no real indicator of where that one's going to go. Total is 3, just a little bit more to under, so at least have some direction there. In terms of where this number has moved, so there's actually been a fair amount of money coming in on Benfica, which shouldn't be a surprise. Another Portuguese side getting bet, but that happened last year. Benfica were really bad and dropped in the Europa League, and honestly look like they're going to finish bottom of their Champions League group. Feyenoord coming in, they clearly miss Arne Slot, and unfortunately, they're a different side than they were under him. And I haven't really been in love with what I've seen from Feyenoord so far, but I do think that they had a pretty good result on the road at Girona, taking a win, if I remember correctly, in a way back and forth crazy matchup. Benfica on the other side, I mean, they got a great win at home over Atletico Madrid, but I feel like that's a lot of Atleti's road woes coming in, and Benfica were a pick 'em in that matchup. So that was a winner for Champions League at the real_G Warner, and I appreciate that. But I feel like it does offer some value on Feyenoord here. So I'm pretty interested in that +1, especially if it's going to keep climbing as Benfica money hits. And I like the under 3 as that's getting a little bit cheaper as well. So those are my two interests in that one. Just really, I think betting against Benfica and really their offense. Last match we go before we get into the ultimate best bet in the show, and I can go to sleep for this evening. Atleti, a 1 goal favorite right now to Lille. All the juice on Atletico Madrid. Over under is 2.5, and it is juiced a little bit more to over. Now Lille did pretty well off the international break, and after beating Real Madrid at home in the last Champions League match day 2. They followed that up with a win over Toulouse that weekend, then had international break and went to draw at League on leader Monaco at the time, starting that last match day this weekend on Friday. Plus, they played Friday. That's a huge rest advantage potentially. I really like the setup for Lille. A one goal underdog's a pretty big price for them. They're definitely not in the same league, of course. They're not in Spain as they're a French side, but they're kind of one of those minor league, like grow a bunch of players and sell them off, selling club, as you see a lot in Liga in France. But Atleti, I mean, they've bought a ton, they spend a ton of money, they invested a lot, but they haven't been very good. They have a very conservative manager who's never going to, that Leopard's never going to change his spots. So all that points to Lille getting a full goal of insurance. Plus, I like under 2.5 because I think those correlate pretty well. I just get the opportunity to be against Atletico Madrid, which is very interesting to me. So we've come to the end of the show. It's time for the ultimate best bet. I'm checking around to see if I have any comments. It's probably not because it's super late, but thank you for coming in and feel free to hit me up on Twitter at @the_real_G_Warner or that same at @the_real_G_Warner on Instagram, Patreon, YouTube, and on whatever the heck I didn't just mention. Super late, so it's probably time to get into the ultimate best bet. Just want to give a couple more ideas of what's coming out on the Betting the Pitch podcast network this week as I set up my cell phone, which I usually do before the episode, but I'm a little bit off the beaten path today or off kilter. We have the NFL episode coming out with A_Schnicker. We are, I think, 8-6 this season. So had a really good start to the year. Had a great run in the playoffs last year. Trying to get back on track. I mean, I guess we're profitable so far this season at 8-6, but certainly we're disappointed and want to do better than that. The Need for Seeds college basketball podcast will be coming out. We have some news coming from that soon. Thank you all for the support, and hopefully I can deliver that sooner rather than later. I have to send it for now, so it's a little bit of a tease. And then I'll be doing a Major League Baseball podcast for the World Series prep with Munaf Manji for pregame. That's coming out later in the week. I think we're shooting for Thursday night with the World Series starting Friday, probably the biggest matchup you could ever ask for. Rob Manfred is very excited, and unfortunately, I don't really want good things to happen to him. So sad for me, but good for him, and probably good for the public and making baseball a little bit more on people's minds coming up as the season comes to a close. Other than that, we'll be doing the Europa League episode on Wednesday night as well, probably after a date, so it might be a little bit later in the night, but here we are, 1:12 local time in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday morning in the wee hours, recording for Champions League, so probably no different. But that's how it will go, and we'll try to find some winners. So I think it's time to get into it. Let's do it. Hey, this is real_G_Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. This is the ultimate best bet for the match day 3 of Champions League. Recording this Tuesday, October 22nd, in the wee hours, as we get ready to try to find some winners across all the matches across Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, all match day 3 in Champions League. There will be a Europa League matchup coming out, or a podcast coming out on Wednesday night, so look forward to that. But here's what I do. I go through every game on the list. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. For my ultimate best bet from Tuesday, I picked Bologna at Aston Villa under 2.5 goals. From Wednesday, Barcelona, a pick'em to Bayern Munchen. And you can find this in all my write-ups, my leans, everything I lock in, all on patreon.com at @the_real_G_Warner. So make sure you go jump on there. But for my best bet in this episode, I'm going to go Barcelona, a pick'em at home to Bayern Munchen. Not the greatest fan base location, but this means a lot to Barcelona, even with Real Madrid on deck this weekend. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you on Wednesday night. And of course, we have NFL podcasts and the college football podcast at pregame.com coming out with Big East Ben. That'll be recorded Tuesday at some point tomorrow afternoon. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you all very soon, and good luck on your bets as we're trying to stack some more paper.